And finally, in the season finale, when the Pogues arrive in South America, they get off the plane, and Ward Cameron calls to Sarah because he wants to help. Sarah tells him, no, you're not helping. Get on the plane and go to Guadalupe. And while Ward says okay, once the Pogues get a little bit far away, he does end up getting off the plane because he just can't take no for an answer. The Pogues get downtown and they're looking for two things: the river guide that Neville talked about, and also Big John. They split up into groups, with Cleo and Pope going one way, and Sarah and John B going the other. It doesn't take long for Sarah and John B to find Big John because they overhear him. He's stuck in a building trying to decipher the stone, but he's been having a tough time for the last month, and Carlos is losing his patience. There's a solstice going on the next day, so they're running out of time. It's either now or never. And he's basically given Big John a few hours to figure it out before they have to leave to trek off into the jungle. Big John knows that his life is at risk, so he attacks one of Carlos's guys, and that is what John B and Sarah overhear. They create a diversion, shooting a bunch of fireworks into the building where they're keeping Big John. It distracts Carlos and his men enough for Big John to escape. But they can't have too much of a reunion because they have to get the hell out of there. They run away to avoid Carlos Singh's men who have taken to the streets to find them. Carlos's guys actually find Pope and Cleo before they find Sarah and the Johns, and that was just by happenstance. Pope and Cleo recognize Carlos Singh's men, so they take off running, and they're shocked because they just so happened to run into JJ and Key. They arrived in South America about the same time that the Pogues did. They had actually just gotten into downtown and were discussing how the hell they were going to find their friends, and that's when they saw Cleo and Pope running in the streets. Just like with John B and his father, the pleasantries of being reunited have to be quick because they're being chased. They don't really know where to turn, so JJ knows one person in the area, and that happens to be Barracuda Mike, who hasn't left yet. So he asks for his help. Barracuda Mike has, in about 12 hours, become a real father figure to JJ because he hands him a machete, and he even calls in a favor to get JJ a boat. While he wasn't able to get him Jose's directions, he does have an idea of where, at the very least, Sarah and the Johns will be headed, so he gives them directions to that. Barracuda Mike then sends Cleo, Pope, JJ, and Key on their way and wishes them well. Back over with the Johns and Sarah, once they get a little bit of space, John B shows his father what Pope found in his family archives, and Big John is thrilled because it's just what they needed. They know, though, they have to keep moving, and a little while later, Big John is able to find Jose, the tour guide that was recommended to them by Neville. It's crazy, though, because Jose, the tour guide, was waiting for them. Not only that, he was already prepaid for, and that's when it's revealed that he was paid for by Ward Cameron. When Ward sees Big John, it goes about as well as expected. Big John wants to kill him. They're making quite a scene. And that's when John B notices that Carlos Singh has also arrived at the dock, so he has to rush these two guys to zip up their flies and end this pissing contest before Carlos and his men catch him. Everybody files into the boat, and Jose takes off. A short while later, the Johns and Sarah arrive at the base of where they have to trek into the jungle. They're planning on doing it the next day. But Big John is very suspicious of Sarah. He doesn't think it was a coincidence that Ward just happened to show up. He thinks that he was tipped off by his daughter. John B doesn't believe that at all, and he's getting tired of his dad acting like everybody's out to get him, because Sarah's played a big part in their success up until this point. He doesn't say anything, though. He just lets his dad talk, because he knows that if they get the gold, it's not going to matter in the end. While those two were having a conversation, Sarah and her dad were also having a conversation where Ward promises, "I'm just here to help." But even Sarah doesn't really trust him. When they wake up the next morning, Big John is rearing to go. He knows that they don't have a lot of time before the solstice hits, so he warns them, if you guys lag behind, I'm not waiting. With Ward Cameron currently nursing a pretty bad stab wound, he definitely would be lagging behind. And the good thing is, Big John doesn't have to give him the speech because Ward says, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out. He does want to be of help, so he says, I got a flare gun. If I see Singh come through here, I'll shoot off a flare to give you guys a warning. And then Big John, his son, and his daughter-in-law head off into the jungle. It takes all day, but at night, they finally arrive at the location where they hope to get directions to El Dorado. First, they have to put that statue in its proper place. When the moon hits a certain height in the sky, certain hieroglyphics start glowing blue. The trio quickly do their best to decipher it, and then they finally get the directions on where to head to hopefully find the gold. There's one final message that Big John deciphers, but he doesn't share it because he doesn't want Sarah to overhear. And this is the final straw for John B. He gets into it with his father about the fact that he is so paranoid he won't share the final message of this puzzle with Sarah, who's helped out this entire time. As John B is screaming at his father, "What does it say?" they get unwelcome visitors from Carlos Singh, who asks, "Yeah, John, what does it say?" And Carlos Singh got there because he was helped out by Ward Cameron. Ward cut a deal with Carlos Singh in order to make sure that Sarah was safe. Although Sarah doesn't want to hear that at the moment, she can't believe that her dad once again stabbed them in the back. Carlos backs up Ward on this, saying, "When we're finished, Sarah, you can go with your father." He then looks at Big John and says, "You can live too if you just give me what I want." Which way is El Dorado? Even with everybody at gunpoint, Big John still ain't saying anything. And it's Sarah who has to jump into action, knocking over one of the guys who had their gun pointed at John B. That guy gets up and points his gun at Sarah, and that's when Ward Cameron shoots him. This causes a bit of a firefight between Carlos Singh and his men against Ward Cameron, Big John, and the kids. Ward really wants Sarah to come with him, and Sarah says, "No, I'm not doing that." And to prove her point, she points a gun in Ward's face and says, "Back away. I'm not going with you." This is something that Ward's probably used to because it's the second time in 3 days where one of his kids has a gun pointed in his face. It does work, though. Ward backs up and he leaves, sneaking off into the jungle and letting the rest of them fight it out. There's only one remaining guy in Carlos Singh's camp, and Carlos instructs him to go find Big John. Don't even worry about the kids. Big John, though, is injured. He took a hit in that firefight, and he's lagging behind. John B is certainly concerned for his dad, but he also knows they're super close to this treasure. At least they hope. Using the clues that were given to them from the stone, they're able to find a cave that they think would contain the treasure. They go inside, and at first, it does look like a dead end, but then they notice a hieroglyphic in the water that signifies that they're on the right track. They just have to get in the water. Big John knows that with his current state, and also his size, he's never going to make it through this tiny hole to get to the other side of the cave. He gives the group 3 flares that'll last 20 minutes each, and tells them, "I'll stay in here and stay guard." Right before they do leave, he tells them the last clue. The patient man can see with no light. Now it's just up to Sarah and John B to hopefully find the treasure that's waiting for them. While they head into the cave, their friends aren't too far away. They've been able to track John B, Big John, and Sarah using Carlos Singh's men, of all things. If they see one of Carlos's guys, they know they're on the right track. This does, however, give Cleo an opportunity to tell Pope how she really feels about him, and the two kiss. So the No Love Club is no more. But the Pogues aren't the only ones looking for John B, his dad, and Sarah. So is Carlos Singh, who continues to trek through the jungle. And it doesn't take too long to find the cave, thanks to Big John's blood trail. When Big John hears Carlos Singh, he hides. He doesn't really have a choice, he's just got to kind of wait it out. The thing is, Carlos knows that. He knows that Big John can't stay in there forever. So in reality, it's just a standoff. Deep inside the cave, however, using all the clues, John B and Sarah have found El Dorado. It was pretty dangerous. It took a lot, but they found the city of gold. And they grabbed some gold chunks to prove it. But they're running out of light from the flare, so they have to head back. And when they come out the other side, they're pretty surprised to see Carlos Singh waiting for them. Singh has them at gunpoint and makes them get out of the water. And that is when Big John finally shows himself. But he has a plan. He's holding a dynamite stick that's lit. He tells them that if Singh wants to kill them, he'll make sure that the dynamite stick goes off. And that way, Singh will never find El Dorado. He'll die in that cave. Singh doesn't believe that Big John will do it. So Big John chucks the dynamite stick deep into the cave. And Carlos Singh, realizing that this could be his opportunity to see El Dorado, goes after it, hoping to extinguish it before it goes off. This allows Big John, John B, and Sarah to try to get out of the cave before it explodes. While the dynamite stick does go off and it does kill Carlos Singh, Sarah and the Johns get thrown out of the cave. And they're banged up, but for the most part, they're okay. The explosion, however, from the dynamite tipped off everybody that was looking for him on where they are. So while they're trying to collect their bearings and they're looking at the haul that they have, which is quite a bit of gold, Ward Cameron shows up. The gold was just too enticing. He wants it for himself. But JJ, Key, Pope, and Cleo rush out of the jungle and surround Ward. They finally caught up to the group. While Ward has a gun and all they have is machetes, Ward's outnumbered and he knows it. Sarah is able to talk him down and give up his gun. But that is when Carlos Singh's last remaining guy shows up looking for the gold himself. And this guy doesn't have a conscience. He's about to steal the gold and start offing people. And the first one he wants to kill is Sarah. Well, Ward isn't going to let that happen. He bum rushes the guy, taking a lot of bullets in the process, but using his momentum to throw the guy off a cliff. It kills Ward, but he's not the only one who dies because Big John caught a stray bullet and he dies as well. Both Sarah and John B. have to set up memorials for their father in the jungle and then head back to the Outer Banks. When they arrive back to the Outer Banks, they arrive as heroes. The Pogues have also taken their new wealth and used it for good. Sarah and John B. opened up a surf shop. Key is saving turtles. Pope's going away to school, and JJ bought a charter boat. They also are suddenly celebrities, and 18 months later, they're honored by the Historical Society for their trek into the jungle and for finding El Dorado. All of a sudden, the same people that wanted to throw them in jail or youth camps suddenly are beaming with pride. But there is one person who took real notice at what they did, and it's the clerk from the Historical Society. He shows up at their ceremony because he's absolutely amazed at what these kids were able to do. And now he wants their help. He explains that he needs some help because he's just too old. And then he pulls out a captain's log, a very old captain's log. And this log has everything. It's got where the ship sailed, where the ship stopped, all the information you would need. When they finally ask the guy, "Oh, who's the captain?" he says, "Edward Teach, Blackbeard." And all of them are very intrigued. And that is how Season 3 ends. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you leave a comment, be nice. Nasty comments make me feel bad. You don't need to point out every single thing I got wrong. It's going to happen. I don't write a script for these things. I just go off what I watched. I have a Patreon. I have merch. Go buy a t-shirt. Go be a subscriber. I don't know. Do whatever.